unlock the power of AI with our Advancing AI Summit in Melbourne on the 3rd to the 4th of May. Join us for 2 days of in-depth discussions and insights from industry leaders on how Australian businesses can enhance their AI practices to achieve substantial ROI. Discover the crucial next steps for scaling productionized models and learning best practices for project prioritization, governance, model monitoring, and measuring business outcomes. We'll talk emerging developments and trends, AI optimization and impact, as well as a fresh take on critical and enduring challenges. Join us at Advancing AI at the Crown Promenade, Melbourne, on the 3rd to the 4th of May and gain the knowledge you need to drive innovation and improve operations in your business. Don't miss out on this opportunity to unlock the full potential of AI.
I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Talent Insights. Talent Insights are Australia's leading specialist data recruitment business. With offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, they're experts at providing recruitment strategy and building data teams for clients across industries Australia-wide. They provide recruitment solutions for all roles across the data lifecycle, including data engineering, data science, advanced analytics, customer and marketing insights, business intelligence, data product managers, and data governance. They're skilled at finding the best permanent and contract hires for your business needs, as well as statement of work, project focus, data resources. At Talent Insights, relationships matter most. I can say from first-hand experience, Talent Insights are fantastic to work with. Whether you're a business leader within an HR network or a specialist data candidate, Talent Insights should be the first company you turn to for all your data recruitment needs. Find them at talentinsights.com.au. Hi, this is Felipe Flores and welcome to Data Futurology. Today we're going to be discussing the role of the Chief Data Analytics Officer and how the Chief Data Analytics Officer can impact the most when organizations are going through large transformations, which is something that a lot of legacy organizations are going through at the moment. There's usually quite aspirational goals in the strategy that the organization wants to move into, and the Chief Data Analytics Officer A is a crucial role to the organization, and then B plays a crucial role in these transformations. So that's what we're going to be covering today. For that, I couldn't have thought of anyone better to speak to about this than Bora Arslan. Bora, thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Thank you so much for making the time. So you started your career both as an insights analyst and also a mathematics professor. Back in Istanbul, if you'll correct me, obviously, and then you are working in the data analytics space. You've gone through the ranks, and you've been in chief data analytics officer roles for about 8 years now, which is, for a lot of people, that's about it can be their tenure in the data analytics space could be 8 years. You've had that in chief data analytics officer roles. How's the journey been for you during that time?
Yeah, sounds good. So Felipe, so let me start with why I got into this domain actually. So I'm a PhD mathematician by education. So let me start talking about why I became a mathematician first. So I was quite amazed with in mathematics, having no gray at all. I mean, 2 + 2 = 4. Beautiful. There is no question, no gray area, nothing. I love that, black and whiteness of mathematics. So that intrigued me quite a bit. So I became a mathematician, but I wanted to do, even though I love mathematics, I wanted to do mathematics for something useful. And I was in exploration of, where I can put this mathematical, perspective in practice. So during my PhD years, even though I started doing pure mathematics at the beginning, and then I shifted into more mathematical economics. I started doing more game theory, social choice theory, and I fell in love with that. And that's actually how I started, doing more, data insights, data mining, so that kind of work, if you will. So that was the start of my journey, if you will. And I have done initially quite a bit of a consulting work. And for various consulting assignments, I was with a small but a very niche consulting company called Peppers and Rogers Group. Don Peppers and Martha Rogers today are still elected to be one of the top business thinkers in the US. They are very visible because of hundreds and hundreds of books that they write, but they also wanted to have a consulting practice as well. So I was helping them, kind of looking after everything data analytics. It was a lot of fun, but I was traveling crazy, so I could not keep up with the travel after the first child. With that, I transitioned to corporate world, and I joined in Walgreens, first in the US. So I'm Turkish by birth, but I spent most of my life in the US. So I joined Walgreens, and that was another really very impactful, transformation, if you will. So Walgreens was sitting a bit behind the curve compared to their rival competition, CVS, in terms of being data-driven, customer-oriented, all that kind of stuff. And I helped them with all of that kind of stuff. And that led me to, create, pilot, and scale one of the largest loyalty programs in the US with Walgreens. And after that, one of my connections for my consulting dragged me from Walgreens into Walmart, and I joined Walmart. That was a very uplifting experience. Walmart is a massive organization, as you all know, of course. And it was difficult as well. So I joined Walmart. That was another, chain of transformations, one after another. And then half of my team with Walmart, Walmart is an interesting place. So Walmart is based in the northwest corner of the state of Arkansas, which is literally between friends in the middle of nowhere. But everything digital, everything mobile is in Silicon Valley. Half of my team was in Arkansas, half of the team was in Silicon Valley. I was back and forth. I was getting ready to move permanently to Silicon Valley, but instead of doing that, I went to United Kingdom to join a insurance conglomerate. And I spent a few years there in the UK. It's beautiful. And then came back to States, started helping for Bora company. And then I was headhunted by Insurance Australia Group to come down to Australia to become their chief analytics officer. And I happily kind of took that and came here. I've been here for about 5 years now. So I was on a contract role after IAG with CBA. CBA later on wanted me to be their chief data analytics officer for their New Zealand extension, ASB Bank, which I happily took. But because I did not have any intention to move to New Zealand, so that contract came to an end, if you will. So that's where I am right now, if that makes sense.
Amazing. Thank you. And how do you see and how do you define the role of a chief data analytics officer in these large organizations?
Yeah. Most of my adult life, I have done these business transformations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, actually. I was talking to a recruiter the other day, and I was telling her everything I've done. And she goes, that doesn't sound like a chief data officer role. Everything you're talking about is a chief marketing officer work. I'm like, not quite. So yes, I am quite instrumental to chief marketing officers, but I enable, their work. So, but one thing that I observed with all these transformations is that, usually organizations are neglecting the people aspect, or for lack of any better word, cultural aspect of it. Meaning, they are very eager to, uplift their, technology stack. They're trying to improve their processes, methodologies, all of that stuff. But all of that also requires quite a bit of a cultural change as well. So you really need to go through, hey, from now on, we need to drop these old habits and we need to adapt these new habits kind of stuff. So that part is usually neglected. And with that, if you are not ready culturally to be the kind of organization that you want to be, the transformation unfortunately fails. I have seen that unfortunately a few times. So as a chief data analytics officer, that is one area that I try to help with, loss, if you will, right? Of course, I work with a very, a mixed talent of, mixed group of talent, if you will. So very important thing is to really clarify what that journey is, what you're trying to accomplish, what you're doing, why you're doing. So that's a very essential part of it. That clarity, that simplicity is quite essential. But a lot more important than that, you need everybody in the organization to understand how they are contributing to that journey. I mean, I can't underline more how important that is. So translating that journey to every single individual in the organization, this is how you're helping with this journey is quite essential. So that's something that I focus on quite a bit, if you will. So even though I'm a PhD mathematician, I really focus on these, people aspects of things that we do, quite a bit, if you will. So that has been my experience as a chief data analytics officer, trying to bring that clarity, trying to bring that simplicity, trying to bring that connection, to journey. Another thing is, yes, as the chief data analytics officer, I can do a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of really great stuff, a lot of, data upgrades, a lot of advanced analytics and AI, whatnot. I can do lots of cool stuff, but I cannot accomplish anything for the bottom line on my own. I have to work hand in hand with lots of other disciplines, marketing, operations, and product, and finance, and IT, and so on and so forth. So from that perspective, it's quite essential that I come to a bit of a handshake with all these different parties and divisions, and they all connect with that journey. So while I do what I need to do, they also kind of understand their share of that as well. So that's is another part that I usually try to help, if you will, if that makes sense.
Yes. No, that really does make sense. And then so I can, I guess maybe partly see the reflection of the recruiter, in the sense that a lot of the work that you've done might be close to or in the camp of a marketing side, like you were saying about launching loyalty programs and obviously being very data driven. In the past, we've had CDAOs in the podcast who actually have the marketing function of the organization reporting to the CDAO. One example was a large Mexican bank, which I found really interesting. But I wanted to maybe dive a little bit deeper into the aspects of the culture. So when you are thinking about change management and taking people along for the journey, getting the best out of them, what are some ways that leaders who are listening to the podcast, what are some ways that leaders can operationalize the creation and maintenance of a great culture?
Yeah. The way I try to do that is usually, I try to architect in my mind a very inclusive, very, collective roadmap, like an enterprise level. So this is our North Star. I can't really emphasize how important that is to have a commonly postulated North Star that everybody agrees to, right? So that's very important. This is the kind of company that we want to be in 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, whatever that is. So that's your North Star, right? And then, break that into components. Okay, this is the work that marketing needs to do over the course of these years. This is the work that data needs to do over the course of years, and so on and so forth. So I try to architect these roadmaps. When I say roadmap, it's not really like a project plan kind of stuff. I'm talking about a very high level way forward, if you will. And the way I do it actually is, I go to my peers. I go to the chief marketing officer. Hey, we can do this together, and this is what I'm thinking that we can do. And then he or she tells me, it doesn't make any sense. This thing here actually the sequencing is wrong. You think this is going to take 6 months, or this is going to take at least 18 months. They give me some feedback, and I go back and rethink about that picture I was trying to portray, and do all the tweaking and readjustments, and go back to them. And I say, how about now? I heard you. You're right, and I made some changes. How about now? So that actually is usually the lengthiest part of these journeys, if you will. It takes a lot of time, a lot of really influencing skills, a lot of really storytelling. And that once they start saying, that makes sense now, I am on the right track, if you will. So, once I have the buy-in, it needs to come to a point where actually it's their journey after a point, not my journey anymore. It's their journey. And then I start getting into, okay, what are the habits that, will not really serve us any longer? What are the changes that we need to kind of bring to life? What are the new habits that we need to adapt, if you will? So that's the way I go about, doing this, if you will.
What do you see the biggest gap between people that are just at a level before a chief data analytics officer and then being a chief data analytics officer? So in people's journey, what is some skill sets that can better prepare somebody who's on the journey to a chief data analytics officer?
As a chief data analytics officer, I had a chance to kind of roll under like a CIO, information technology kind of organizations. I had a chance to kind of do what I do as a direct report to COOs. I had a chance to do what I do as a direct report to chief customer officer as well. And there was even instances where I was direct reports to the CEO, herself, himself as well. But what I have observed is that actually every time I am a lot more closer to the operation itself, then I perform much better. Because if I am a part of an IT organization, then there's a bit of a connotation. Then actually you become a support function, right? And it's okay. There is nothing wrong with being a support function, enabling function. There is nothing wrong with that. It's the nature of the work I do anyway. But if I am, working directly with the COO or CEO or chief customer officer, then I'm a lot more closer to the action itself. I can identify the opportunity, firsthand. I can really prescribe, my approach to that challenge, firsthand. When I kind of do that, I always perform better, if you will, if that makes sense.
And how deep do you recommend CDAOs to get into the operations of the business?
That's my suggestion. Because of course, data analytics in nature represents change. It represents innovation. Represents improvements and things like that. So in order for you to really have a very clear idea as to how that can manifest, what that improvement, what that change should be, it's always useful to be as close as possible to operation itself, the business itself, if you will. So that's my experience, if you will.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I wanted to ask you about the implementing components that you mentioned. One of the aspects that you're talking about was influencing peers at a C-suite level. What are some ways that you've seen work well when it comes to influencing peers that are so senior in different parts of the business?
Yeah, sure. That's essential. So going back to what I was saying earlier, simplicity, clarity. So when you talk about, hey, this is what we can accomplish together, and this is what I am willing to do, but I will need you to also, do things alongside. So when you kind of get into that kind of language, that simplicity, that clarity is essential. If you are using, data analytics language to your chief operating officer, you will lose that battle.
Yeah,
you need to use relative language there, if you will, because you are not doing something out of the blue. So you are actually trying to do something that will benefit these COOs, CMOs and things like that. So you need to use their language, if you will. So whatever the business challenge that they are facing, you need to kind of speak to that, not your language. So that's quite essential, if you will. Which is not easy, to be honest. It's not easy, but quite essential. So that's one tip, definitely one tip. The second thing is, I actually did this mistake myself before. Even though you are trying to influence, the peers, the other C-suite and things like that, just remaining at that C-suite alone might not be enough. You also need to go down a level as well. You also go talk to mid-management as well. I mean, as I said, I did this mistake before. I worked like 18 months to get a buy-in from the C-suite. I got the buy-in. That was fantastic. And when I pushed the button, the mid-management said, "Did you ask us?" And I had to go through that influencing again. That kind of added time to my timeline, if you will.
That is a excellent tip. That is an excellent tip. Yes. No, I agree. I've made that mistake as well. Actually, not considering the I guess the 360-degree view of where the influence needs to be focused on. I've also been too narrowly focused at times. That's really, really interesting. And now if we go to talking about the structure of the data analytics teams, what are some ways that you have structured your teams in the past, and what do you see as some of the trade-off decisions that executives need to make when it comes to structuring teams?
Usually the way I go about that is if you are early in your journey, it always helps starting things in a centralized fashion. Because, ideally, I don't even need, the data analytics experts, to be in my team. Actually, I would love them to be, embedded into business units themselves. I would love that. But in order for you to get there, you need to kind of, develop a bit of a maturity, if you will. So to establish that maturity, starting centralized always is useful. So because basically what you're doing actually is, you're building some solutions, you're kind of building some buttons, so to speak. And then you are letting, the business units push on those buttons afterwards. But building those buttons is the maturity I'm talking about. So you need to go through that maturity. So usually I go about that actually is, start centralized, build the capabilities, build the processes, kind of have a bit of a, agreed upon, way of attacking, these challenges. And once you have the adequate level of maturity, you can fragment, the function, the capability, and embed these experts into business units, if you will. So that's usually I go about the structure, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And how do you look at the structure versus project delivery, or I guess maybe focusing on project delivery? What are some ways to optimize the project delivery from the data analytics organization?
So what's becoming a bit popular recently is organizations have these delivery / portfolio teams as well. They don't necessarily do the delivery themselves, but they provide an oversight as to what's going on. Are we on track? Are we tracking behind? What are the challenges? In terms of the investments and budget, are we tracking well, and all that kind of stuff. So that's what they do, which actually is quite useful because most of the data analytics people, let's call them left brain people. So this monitoring, and staying on top of the plan and things like that. That's not necessarily their core skill, if you will. So if that comes from elsewhere, it's always beneficial, if you will. But that said, whatever the work that you do, you're always, of course, responsible for the delivery of what you do. So you always need to kind of try to keep track of everything. But my experience is actually, these specialized delivery portfolio groups are making all that monitoring a bit easier, if you will. So that's my experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what do you see that the kind of delivery lead or project management function, where do you think that should sit? Should it sit within the analytics team, in a centralized function for the entire business, in another business line? Where have you seen that works out, or what are the trade-offs, I guess, in having a different?
My thought actually, I was challenged with this several times before, but my thought is actually, in terms of project management, I think every discipline has their own project management capability within. So that's my preference, if you will, because as I said, everybody is responsible, for their own delivery, and everybody should be tracking, their performance, their how they're tracking and things like that. So from that perspective, my preference is that actually data analytics should have its own, project management, kind of capability. But you might have a enterprise level portfolio, kind of discipline that kind of does that on a more broader level. That's fine. But my preference is to have my own project management, capability within, if you will.
Fantastic. Yeah, I really like that. And what about change management? Do you think that should be a function that sits within the analytics team, or something centralized within the business lines? What are your views?
So usually organizations have specialized, skilled change managers, right? So they quite understand. One important expertise there is, they try to understand fears that might associate with these changes, right? So how the organizations would interpret this change. What does that mean for them? Is that really impacting their psychology? Is that really impacting, their outlook? That kind of stuff. So, which is very, very useful. But I think one thing that definitely needs to sit with data analytics is, going back to what I was saying earlier, is bringing that clarity, bringing that simplicity. Because if you do that, if you bring the clarity, if you bring the simplicity, and if you really allow people to connect with what you're trying to do, the change is easier, if you will. I mean, change managers can still, do their job, but as I said, bringing that clarity, simplicity, and connecting people to what you do should still sit with data analytics. That's my thinking.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And what do you see as the processes and methodologies that are key to underpinning the success of the analytical functions and the projects?
So as I said, the cultural uplift, my observation is that actually is usually a challenging part. Not quite well understood. It's not quite well invested. It's not quite well managed, kind of stuff. Well, one important part of these cultural uplifts is always, let's call that data literacy, right? As an organization, everybody says the right things. Everybody says data is the fuel, data is important, whatever. All good, but do we really understand data? Do we really understand how we should control the data, how we should manage the data, how we should store the data? Do we really understand at the very first place which data that we need to create, which data we need to collect? How do we consolidate that data? Where do we keep that? How do we store it? What kind of technology do we use to kind of consolidate this data? And how do we consume this data? So all of this actually is goes into, in my mind, to that literacy, data literacy that I talked about. I am still seeing, there is a lot of gap in terms of uplifting companies to adequate level of data literacy in these terms, if you will.
Yes. No, that's really true, actually. Nice. And maybe switching gears a little bit, if we look out onto the future, what are some of the other either technology or innovations that you see coming up in the next, say, 18, 24 months that you think are critical for leaders to be on top of that? So maybe some of the ones that you're excited about. What do you see coming up down the pipeline that people need to be aware of and actioning?
There is several actually. So not one. It's hard to kind of boil everything down to one. But let me talk about that. A few things. I mean, the whole topic of AI is of course very exciting. Very emerging. There is still a lot of opportunities there, right? So there is lots of things that you can do with AI. But one thing that you can do with AI is usually. I mean, most of the time, as divisions, as functions, what we're trying to do, we're trying to kind of enable a flawless customer experience. So that's most of the time is the ambition, right? Which makes sense, right? And in order for us to realize that, actually, everybody has a long list of things that they can do. And let's call them levers. And there is no really a clear inventory of all these levers available to us, right? If I pull this down, if I pull this up, this is the impact that I'm seeing on this KPI kind of stuff. So that actually is something that AI can help with, tremendously, if you will. I mean, we can do, lots of little experimentations and collect more data, around those lines. And AI can tell us really what are the most impactful levers that we have to really make the most significant impact on a certain KPIs. If that makes sense, I think that's a big opportunity for me in relation to AI. Of course, AI is fantastic, it's big, so there's lots of things that you can do. Lots of cool things that people are doing already. Matching, customer profile to service consultants. There is lots of opportunities there. But that one area of AI, having the ability to tell us what our best levers are, is something that excites me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really good. And out of curiosity, what were some of the other areas that you see are important when we look into the future? That areas that leaders should be thinking about?
So we talked about data management, right? So actually, data management in Australia is quite regulated. So especially financial institutions, but any business, to be honest, should really have a very robust, picture of how they manage their data. As I said, what data they collect for what purpose, how they consolidate this data, how they store that data, where does it go, which technology they use, to kind of store this data, and how, they consume this data. And they need to kind of create the adequate level of data quality. They need to have all sorts of rules. They need to kind of continue to monitor, how data is actually evolving. They continue to kind of track, how data moves within the organization from the source systems into, target systems. And oftentimes you need to report to regulators how you're doing with all of that. And also all these controls that you're building around those things, how do you kind of stay on top of keeping the integrity of that data, with these controls that you're building, right? But what I'm seeing actually is, and it's really a difficult thing. It's quite a complex, thing to do. If you look at big organizations collecting massive amount of data, managing all that massive amount of data is not an easy kind of task. So from that perspective, actually, they tend to kind of rather than looking at the entire population of data, they actually kind of try to identify the most critical data. They call that, critical data elements. And they try to manage at least those, if you will, if they cannot manage the whole thing. But as the technology improves, as AI improves, there is a lot of automated ways of doing this kind of work. So you can actually portray the picture of, what data you have, what blocks of data you have, and what's the integrity in association with those. You can actually portray that picture, but it changes frequently. It changes, it's really hard to stay on top of that. But as I said, there are some technologies today that can automate all that work. You can actually use some AI, if you will, to categorize every single data element. Is this a sensitive data? Is it a personal data? Is it a private information? Is it a financial information? You can actually do all the categorization in a more automated way. So that is something that I am enjoying, becoming quite better than what it was before, if you will. So as an example, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. That's such an important area, and that I love that amount of focus on it. This is really good. So I got one more question for you, maybe a big one. Out of all the work that you've done to date, amazing career that you've had so far, what would you say that you're most proud of that you've done?
Yeah, it's hard to kind of pick one. I think because I have done all these business transformations, I think everything I've done was quite uplifting, if you will. But if I push myself, I think the time I spent at Walmart, the work that I've done with Walmart was really very challenging, because to really get a go and really roll up the sleeves, to kind of bring all that buy-in, to kind of bring all that endorsement. It took me a lengthy time, as I said, about 18 months or so. Because Walmart is a massive organization. There is maybe, I don't know the number exactly, but there is dozens of CEOs, within Walmart. There's the global CEO, that every country has its own CEO. A territory is like a South America, whatever. They all have different CEOs. And all that dozens of CEOs, under those dozens of CEOs, there is an army of C-suite. So the kind of people that I had to influence was really quite a sizable group of C-suite, if you will. So that's why it took quite a bit of a time, for me to kind of get the buy-in that I needed. And once I got the buy-in, one thing that I worked on was beyond my own capacity, beyond my own team. I wanted to create a bit of a coalition within the organization with different divisions, with different geographies. So that took another time for me to create. But once I did that, I was on the right track. So everything was a lot better. We have done really massively impactful, transformations. So every single one of them was very, pleasing. So that's one thing that I can say. The most recently, when I was supporting, CBA's New Zealand Bank ASB, I really worked hard on uplifting the data literacy there, right? Mm-hmm. And I did not spend too much time there, maybe about a year or so. But at the end, I could see visibly, the data literacy, being uplifted. So that was quite pleasing for me to see, at least, if you will, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely. That's amazing. So data literacy is such an important topic to as a CDO, to make sure that we're increasing the level across the organization, and particularly with the executives, in order to get a lot more traction and a lot more impact in the work that we do. So I can see how it's one of those lead dominoes that starting that one makes future things a lot easier. And in terms of the time that you spent at Walmart, was there one kind of like defining change or deliverable that you look back at most fondly?
Yes. Again, this might sound like a chief marketing officer work, but when I started with Walmart, the first thing I attacked on was a subsidiary of Walmart called Sam's Club. So it's the same model as Costco. It's a wholesale model. So they had two-tier membership there. The higher tier members were paying additional money, but they could never justify why those additional members were, higher tier members were paying additional money. And that's the bit I worked on. And we created a very data-driven, personalized discounting program as a main benefit to that higher tier. And that was massively impactful. So that actually kind of helped grow that higher tier quite significantly. So that was very beautiful to observe, if you will.
Wow. Yes. And that was, very, at least from my perspective, it seems like very progressive work, because I think this was about a decade ago, maybe 10 to 12 years, that at the time, like looking at these models where it's a subscription business in a retail industry, that creates the margins to subsidize the actual products that are being sold, which that used to be the main focus. It seems to me that it's quite very, very progressive for where the industry was at the time. Yeah, amazing. Well, Bora, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your journey, your insights, your perspectives. I think that we've done such a great job in picking your brain about the role of the CDO, the role that CDOs play in business transformation, the impact, the uplift that we can have by bringing in this capability in that crucial moment when organizations are, changing the way that they do things and wanting to create a new uplifting capability. So thank you so much for sharing everything that you've done with us today, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Fantastic. My pleasure.
Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel so more people can find out about the challenges that leaders have in the analytics and AI space. And that's what we're trying to share in Data Futurology. So please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Thank you so much.